What's up everybody, welcome back. In today's video we're going to take a look at a few smaller things before we continue with the more important stuff. So I want to take a look at setting up different types of containers. We're going to set up spawning in loot and containers, and we're also going to take a look at the interactable hints on the HUD and our newsfeed on the bottom right. So if we pick up or remove items from the inventory, we will get them displayed in the newsfeed on the bottom right. So I think we can get all of that stuff done today, and then in the next video I want to take a look at stacking items and splitting stacks and all that kind of stuff. So if you like the project, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to get your hands on the project file, you can become a member of the YouTube channel, and then you will get access to the premium channels in the Discord, and this project is one of them. So with that stuff out of the way, let's start today's video. So first of all, a few small things we need to take care of. If we take a look inside the first person character, if we press our interact key, we can still drop items with them, and that's not supposed to happen. So that was just for testing, and we can get rid of that for now. So if we go to the server interact with the interactable, and over here if the interactable actor is not valid, we are removing an item from inventory. So we're not going to do that anymore. We can drop items right now by dragging them outside of the inventory grid. So we don't need this part anymore. Let's get rid of it. That can actually mess up our inventory. So compile and save that. And then we also want to take a look at the inventory widget. So over here we still have the take and place item buttons, and we also don't need those anymore because we can drag items around right now. So let's get rid of both of those buttons, and in the event graph we can also get rid of the events for them. So we have on-clicked events for place and take item, so we can simply get rid of those. And then I think we don't need the temp item name anymore, so let's make sure it's not in here anymore, so we can get rid of that one as well. So compile and save it, and with that stuff done, we cannot mess up the inventory anymore with old stuff that we don't need. So now let's continue setting up the container types. So we already have a row name set up in the container, but we're not actually using it. So I simply made a second mesh for the container where I scaled it up a little bit on one side, so it's a little bit bigger. And I'm going to use that to set up a separate container. So first of all, we're going to create a structure. Let's go to blueprints and then create a new structure. And this is going to be the structure container types. Container types. So let's set up the structure first. In here we want to set up the container mesh. So that's the static mesh. And we can also set up the mesh scale in here. So that might be useful. So mesh scale, and then make it a float. And the last thing we're going to add in here for now is the container inventory size. So let's call it inventory size. And that's going to be an integer. So that way we can define different sizes of the inventories for the containers as well. So with the structure in place, we can create a data table for it. So go to miscellaneous and then select data table. And then select the structure we just created. So that's the container types structure. And then I'm going to call this my container types table. And let's set this one up. So we can set up two different containers right now because I have two static meshes. So first of all, I'm just going to call this one crate. And then for the mesh, that's going to be the normal crate mesh, so the small one. And then I have the scale set to 0.8, otherwise it looks a little bit big. And for the inventory size, I'm going to set this one to 7. And then I'm going to duplicate this one, and this is going to be crate big. And for this one, I'm going to select the bigger mesh, and then I'm going to set the size to 14. So we have two different sizes in here as well. So we can save and close the data table, and then all we need to do is set up the construction script in the container. So let's open up the container blueprint, go to the construction script, and we already have the container row name variable in place. So we can get a table row and plug in our container row name and make sure that we select our container types table. So then we can simply break the result over here and set the mesh and the scale and the size. So let's grab the container mesh first and let's set a static mesh. So we can plug it in from the data table over here. And then we can set the relative scale of the mesh. So drag off the mesh again and set relative scale 3D. And then I'm going to split it. So I can plug in the float in all three of them. And the last thing we want to do is set up the inventory size. So we can simply get a setter for that one and plug it in over here as well. And then we need to make sure that if we go to the event graph begin play, so right now I have a static setter over here that sets all sizes to 14, so we can simply get rid of that one. So the construction script will set it, and then this should be good to go. We do need to make sure that we plug in the inventory size over here again. So that will match up the last index of the for each loop. Okay. So compile and save that one, and that should be good to go. So now we need to make sure that we set up the containers that we already have in the level, and they probably don't have a container row name over here. So first of all, let's make sure that one matches up. So I'm going to make these one the small crates. Or I can make one small and one big. So let's make one big and one small crate over here. And then if we open up the level, they should look different. So let's have a look. And they do not look different. So that could be because our save game is still in place. So let's make sure that we delete our save game. So let's go to the Explorer. And let's go to saved save games and get rid of this stuff. And now let's see if it's working. So now it's actually working. And then the next time if we open up the level with the correct save game, it should still be the big container. So that's working, and now this one has an inventory size of 14 and this one has an inventory size of 7. So we have our containers set up. Now let's take a look at spawning in loot and spawning in containers as well. Let's take a look at spawning in loot and containers. So it's not really hard, but I just want to make sure that I showed how you need to do it. So in the third person game mode in our event begin play, we have a boolean over here where we check if we are the first time loading map. So if we want to spawn in dynamic loot with a function or things like that, we need to do that over here in the true branch. And then the first time the map is loading, everything will spawn in. It will be taken care of in the save game. And then the next time everything will load correctly from the save game without spawning it again. So that's the proper way how to do it. So let's set up a simple function where we spawn in a few things. So I'm going to call this spawn dynamic loot. And then I simply want to spawn in a few actors. So first of all, let's spawn in 2 pickups, for example. So I'm going to spawn actor from class. And I can simply spawn in my pickup. So then I need to set the pickup up. So this is going to be an orb, for example. And for the item contents, I'm going to make an array. And then make a structure again, so make inventory content structure, and then for the item row name I'm going to make this an orb, and then this is simply going to be one orb. Now for the location I'm going to grab it from my example project, so I'm simply going to spawn it at this transform. So let's spawn in a second orb at another location, so I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. And then grab the second location from the example project as well. So, there we go. So if you want to take the locations, it's 1750, 2100, 200, and the first one is 1750, 1900, 200. So plug this in as well. So we're spawning 2 orbs over here. And then we can also spawn in a container, for example. So if we grab another spawn actor from class, and then this time we're going to spawn a container. So we can set up the container row name. So if we want to spawn in a big crate, for example, this is going to be crate big, and then make an array again. And then we can set up the array. So let's add 2 items in here and make a inventory content structure. So let's grab 2 fans. So this is a fan, and there's going to be 2 of them. 2 fans. And then for the second one, let's grab 2 dishes. So let's make inventory structure. And then this is the dish. And again, 2 of them. So we're adding 2 fans, 2 dishes, and 2 orbs. So we had 6 of each item, and now we have 8 of each item. So we can still easily check if everything is working correctly. So we can compile this. We need a spawn transform. So let's grab that from the example project. So 1300, 1900, 200. Plug it in over here. And that should be good to go. So if we go back to the event graph, then we want to grab our spawn dynamic loot function and plug it over here in the true branch for the first time loading map. And then simply continue by setting up the pickup actors and the container actors. So compile and save it, and then we do need to make sure that we delete the save game for this to be taken into account. So again, if we go to our Explorer and then go to the saved save game folder and simply delete those, then the new stuff should spawn into the map. So if we try and have a look, so we have the new stuff on top of here, and we have 2 orbs. And those should be single orbs. So if I pick up 1, there's only 1 in my inventory, and then there's the second one. So that's matching up. And then for the container, there should be 2 fans and 2 dishes. So that's correct as well. And we have 8 of each item in the map. So that should be good. So we have spawning in loot done as well. Now we're going to take a look at setting up the interactable hint and the newsfeed on the HUD. So to set up our interactable hint, we already added a function to our interface. So first let's make sure that we set up the functions for that interface. So let's open up the BP container and let's get to the get interact hint text function. And for the container, we're simply gonna type in here open container. So that's pretty simple. And then we need to do the same thing for the pickup item. So let's open the BP pickup as well. And in here for the interface, get interact hint text. And for the pickup, I want to do it slightly different. So we're going to format a text here. And then we can say something like pick up. And then open bracket A, close bracket. And in here, I'm going to plug in the pickup name. So then it's going to say pickup orb or pickup fan or pickup dish. So it looks a little bit cleaner. So compile and save that one as well. So with those functions in place, let's take a look at the widget first. So let's go to our in-game HUD. And in here, I want to add the pickup hint to the designer first. So I'm going to add a border in here, grab a little icon and then put some text in there. So first let's grab a border, and for the border I'm gonna give it a name, so that's going to be the border interactable hint. And let's turn that into a variable. Then we have some colors and stuff set up, so that's going to be this one. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the content color. So I need to grab the tint over here, this one. And then for the alignment, I'm going to anchor it to the center. And let's set up the position. So that's going to be 100 minus 100. And then I'm gonna size it to the content, and that should be good to go. So inside of the border, I'm gonna drop a horizontal box. And in the horizontal box, first I'm gonna grab myself an image. And then a spacer, so that's inside primitive. Yeah, there we go, spacer. And then I want to grab some text again and drop that in the horizontal box as well. So the text is going to be the text interactable hint. And that's going to be a variable. Now let's make sure that our font matches. So copy and paste it over here. And grab the correct color. So that looks a little bit better. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, 18. So for the image, I'm going to grab a simple image from the, I think it's from the Stackable project as well. So, or it might be from the Lyra game, to be honest. It's just a simple Xbox image, nothing special, but it looks a little bit different if there is an image in front of here. So let's set up the brush and then give it the same tint as the text. There we go. And then let's grab the spacer and let's make the space a little bit bigger, something like 15. So that's going to be the interactable hint. Now by default I want this border to be hidden, so let's select the border and let's make it hidden. And then we should be good to go over here, so we can go into the graph and create a function to actually use it. So I'm going to call the function set interactable hint visibility. So let's create a new function, set interactable hint visibility. And we're going to give it two inputs. The first one is the new visibility, that's a boolean. And then the second one is the hint text, and that's a text variable. So turn the one into a text. So first of all, we're going to grab a branch and we want to know if we want to show or hide it. So then we can grab our border interactable hint and we can set the visibility. So if it's true, we want it to be visible, and if it's false, we want to hide it. Plug in the border and set it to hidden. And if we want to set it to visible, we also want to set the actual text. So we're going to grab the text interactable hint and we're going to set the text. Plug it in and simply grab the text from the function input, and that should be good to go. So compile and save that one as well. And then we can go inside of our player controller to create a function to call this one. So let's go into the inventory folder, third person controller. And first of all, let's create a function to use this one. So we're gonna, no, we do not need a function, I'm sorry. We're simply gonna go to the event graph and we're gonna create a custom event. So custom event, and let's call this something like HUD set interact hint. Now we want this event to replicate to the owning client, and then we're going to grab our in-game HUD and we're simply going to call our set interactable hint visibility. So set interactable hint visibility, plug it in, and we're going to pass on the variables. So now if we're not the owning client, we can call this and make sure it ends up on the correct instance of our player controller. So let's compile and save it. And then with this function in place, or event in place, we can go to the character and make a small change in here. So let's go to the third person character. And over here we have the overlap events for the mesh. And over here we set our interactable actor. So first let's grab the top branch, that's when we actually enter the overlap event. So then we want to drag off the actor and we can call our interface function getInteractHint. So let's do that first, getInteractHint, and that's our message from the BPI Interactable Actor interface. So plug it in over here, and that will return the text for the hint. So then we can simply grab our player controller, third person controller, and we're going to call our replicated event. So that's HUD set interact hint. Plug it in over here. So we want to make it visible, and then we can plug in the text. And then we can simply grab these two nodes, set interact hint, and go to the lower branch over here. So if we leave the overlap event, then we want to make sure that our hint disappears. So we're going to plug it into both of the branches over here. The is not valid as well. And then we're going to set the visibility to false, and we don't need to plug in the text. So that should be good to go. So right now this should work. So if we compile and save, we can have a look in game. And right now, if we overlap something over here, then the hint will appear on our HUD. So pick up fan, pick up orb, and stuff like that. And if we go to a container, it says open container. So we have the interactable hint working as well. Now we only have the newsfeed left to do. So let's set up the newsfeed on the bottom right if items get removed or added from our inventory. So first of all, let's create a new widget for that. Right click, go to user interface blueprint widget, and let's create a user widget. So I'm going to call this the newsfeed row. So widget blueprint, newsfeed row, and let's open it up. Now this is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to grab some text and drop it on top of here. So I want to make sure that font matches, so let's go to the HUD, and I'm going to grab the font from here, copy it, and then paste it to my newsfeed row, and make sure that the color is correct as well. So then I want to grab the minimal desired width over here, and I'm going to set it to 350, and I want to make it on the right side of my HUD. So I'm going to set the justification over here to right. So if you want it on the left side of your screen, you might not want to do that. So justification right. And then we need to turn the text into a variable. So that's going to be the text newsfeed. And make sure that we enable is variable. So that's the most of it. Now let's create an animation to fade this out. So let's go to window, and then we're going to enable, we already have the animations tab. So if you do not have it on the bottom here, you can go to window and then select animations, and it will appear. So we're going to select the text newsfeed and then create a new animation. I'm going to call it UI anim text fade out. Then with the text selected, I want to add the first keyframe, so we need to select the animation over here as well, and then I'm simply going to go to the color and opacity and set the first alpha keyframe to 1, and then make the animation 1 second long, and then set the alpha to 0 and add another keyframe. So I'm simply fading it out over the course of 1 second. So that's all. So we have the animation in place as well. Let's compile and save it. If we close it down, so we want to make sure that we set our opacity back to 1 for the default. So make sure that it's actually visible. If we close it down and reopen it, so that should be good. Then in the event graph, we can set up our event construct. So that's going to be pretty simple as well. We need one variable over here, and that's the newsfeed text. So that's a text variable, and we need to make it instance editable and then exposed on spawn. So we're going to grab our text newsfeed and we're going to set the text, plug it in to the event construct, and we can simply plug in the newsfeed text variable. Then we want to wait for a few seconds for how long you want it to be on screen. So I'm going to give it 3 seconds on screen by default. And then we're going to play our fade out animation. So I'm going to grab the UI anim fade out and then play animation. plug it in over here as well, so we can leave the defaults. We want to start at the beginning, play it once, play forward, so that's all good. Then we're going to wait for 1 second because the animation takes 1 second to complete, and then the text should be faded out. So then we can simply remove ourselves from parent, so remove from parent and keep the target to self. So that should be good to go. That's going to be our newsfeed row. So with this widget in place, we can add it to the in-game HUD. So let's open up our HUD. And we want to add a vertical box for this. So we're simply going to grab a vertical box over here and drop it on top of our canvas panel. So we want the vertical box to be a variable. So I'm going to call this my vert box newsfeed. And then let's align it first. So I'm going to anchor it to the bottom right. And then set it to -50, -250, -250, and then I'm going to enable, for the alignment, I'm going to set both of them to 1. There we go, and then I'm going to enable size to content, so there's nothing left over here, but the box is actually in place. We need to make sure that it's a variable, so select it, enable is variable. Then compile and save, and that should be good to go. Then we can go into our graph, and we want to create a function to add a line to our newsfeed. So I'm going to create a new function, and let's call it add line to newsfeed. So we're going to create a widget in here, so let's drag off, create widget. Nope. And we want to create our newsfeed row. So we need a text, and we can plug it into the event to create an input. For the owning player, we can simply get our owning player and plug that in. And then we're going to add this to our vertical box. So grab the vertical box newsfeed, and we're going to add a child. And plug in the return value. So that should be good, and after 3 seconds the fade will kick in by itself, and after another second it will delete itself from the vertical box. So there's nothing really left for us to do. So we can save the in-game HUD, close it down, and then go to our player controller to create an event to use it. So let's go to our inventory, player controller, and this time we do want to create an function for this first. So let's create a function, and I'm going to call this HUD update newsfeed. So we're going to give this 3 inputs. The first one is going to be the item row name. So that's our name variable. Then we're also going to add the item amount. That's an integer, and the last thing we need is a boolean, and that's going to be is item added. So turn that one into a bool. First of all, we want to grab in our in-game HUD, and let's make sure that it's valid. So plug that one in, and then we're going to continue by getting a table row name. So let's get a table row, not a table row name. And we need to get our pickup item info. So we can grab the item row name from the function input. And we can break the result over here. Then we want to know if we added or if we removed an item. So we're going to grab a branch, and we can simply plug in the boolean from the event. So is item added. And then we're going to grab our in-game HUD reference. And we're simply going to add a line to newsfeed. So if this is true, an item is added to our inventory. So I'm going to drag off here and format a text. And then I'm going to simply say something like added, open bracket, a close bracket, and then also create a b variable. So open bracket, b close bracket. Nope. And then I'm going to add a times symbol. So it's going to say added fan 4 times, for example. And then we can grab the pickup name from the item contents. So that's the A pin, and the B pin is going to be the item amount, and that's the input from the function. And if an item got removed, we can do the same thing. So we can copy and paste it over here. And this time we're going to say removed instead of added. And again, we can plug in the pickup name and the item amount. So we can call this function to create the correct text and send it over to the HUD. And now we need to go to the event graph, and we want to create a replicated event. Oh, my notes are screwing up. So a replicated event again, so we can call this if we are not the owning client. So in the event graph, we're going to create a custom event and call this a client HUD update newsfeed, because we already have HUD update newsfeed. So client HUD update newsfeed, and this event needs to replicate to the owning client, and then we can simply call our function and pass on the variables, so the item row name, the amount, and the item added boolean. Okay, so with this function in place, the last thing we need to do is go inside of our character. And inside of the third person character, we have the add and remove item from inventory functions. And in there, we need to make a small update. So let's go to add item to inventory first. And all the way at the end, we have the HUD update inventory grid. So right after that, we can also update our newsfeed, for example. So that's disconnected, and we're going to grab our third person controller again. And this time we can call our client HUD update newsfeed. So we want to call the replicated event over here and not the function. So plug it in. And then we can get our item row name and our item amount from the contents. So if we go all the way to the beginning, we're storing the content to add in a local variable. So we can simply grab that local variable and then break that structure. So let's go to the local content to add, and we can break the structure over here and plug in the item row name and the item amount. And in this case, we're adding an item to our inventory, so we want to make sure that the boolean is set to true. And then we can go to remove item from inventory and do kind of the same thing. So again, we're going to go all the way to the end over here, and we're going to update our newsfeed. So let's grab our third person controller and call client HUD update newsfeed. Plug it in over here. And this time we can get our information from the item contents. So if we go all the way to the beginning over here, the item info from the function. So we want to grab this input and we're going to break that. So we're going to simply get the item info, and we're going to get the first item in the array, because this is a pickup, so it can only contain one item. And then we can break it and plug in the row name and the item amount. And we're not adding an item, but we're removing one. So we're going to keep the boolean set to false. And now this should work. So if we compile and save, and let's make sure that we check it out in a two-player project, so we can check it for a client and a host. So let's move it to the side, grab the client over here and select the save slot. So let's check out the client first. So we have a hint, and if we pick up an item on the right side, we have our newsfeed, and they should fade out and nicely disappear. So that works. And if we remove an item from our inventory, the newsfeed also pops up, so that's also working. And let's make sure the same thing is happening for the server. So we also have our newsfeed over there, and it's nicely fading out. And if we move an item, it's also working. So we have the newsfeed in place, we have the interactable hints, we can spawn in loot, and we have different containers with different sizes. So we did quite a few interesting things today actually, and it didn't take too long, so not too bad. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.